Welcome to Desi Return Diaries, Embracing Home Again, the podcast that shares personal journeys and expert insights on returning to India. I'm your host, Avinash Pedi, here to guide and inspire you on your Desi return journey. Hello, welcome to another episode of Desi Return. Today, we have another guest. It's Abhishek, who have lived in US for 14 years, and he is currently on a sabbatical, exploring to start his own startup. So really excited to talk to him as he's planning to do the startup in India about his journey and how it's been going on. With that, welcome to the show, Abhishek.
Thank you so much, Avinash, for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here today.
That's great. So, Abhishek, if you can give a bit of a background for our audience, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So, hi everyone, I'm Abhishek Gupta. I'm currently an associate professor at the Ohio State University. And as Avinash mentioned, I'm right now spending my sabbatical in Bangalore. I have been in the US for 14 years. I went there in 2009 to start my PhD at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And since 2015 onwards, I've been employed at the Ohio State University. So I was an assistant professor earlier, and now recently I got promoted to associate professor. And we get a 1 year sabbatical leave to do whatever the heck we want to do. So I started a company called RewardWise, which is basically an app for small businesses to start their own loyalty program or membership program or rental program. So that's what our app is. Our app is providing a platform for multiple businesses to provide those kind of services to their customers, and customers can look at all their different activities within the app. So that's our startup in a nutshell, for which I'm here in Bangalore and building our business here in Bangalore.
Great. So thank you very much, Abhishek, for that background. So when did you move back, or when did you come for sabbatical to India?
Yeah, so I came here on 4th of July, technically, which is an Independence Day in the US. So on 4th of July, we landed in India, and since then, I've been continuously living in Bangalore.
That's great. So maybe we can dive a little bit into your experience of building a startup in Bangalore and how has it been going. Especially there are a lot of people who are thinking about doing their own startup. So it would be definitely be very helpful to get your journey and your insights and your experience doing a startup, setting it up, and trying to build a team and so on.
Yeah. Certainly, I think it's a very, very fascinating question. So my wife is a small business owner in Columbus, Ohio. She runs her own company called chaibag.com. So I have seen her struggle firsthand with respect to both customer acquisition as a new company. How exactly do you acquire customers, and how exactly do you engage with customers, and sort of gamify the process of uh, buying items from her. So I've seen it firsthand, seen her struggle firsthand, and so I thought that maybe within the small business space there is a lot of opportunity to build a company which is serving as a way for small businesses to both interact with their customers and try to communicate what value they are bringing in their life, in their customers' life, somewhat easily. And that's what our startup is about. Uh, so that's the background on where I found the inspiration for starting my company. Later on, when I thought that I wanted to do a startup, the whole idea is you need to be where the customers are. So I'm very fascinated by the Indian markets as such. In Indian markets, the way the selling happens right now is completely offline. And as India is moving towards becoming a $5 trillion and $10 trillion economy, a lot of some of the offline businesses that are happening will have to move online. We've already seen that in the restaurant space. So that's why I feel that even though a US market is predominantly online already, Indian markets will be moving online from the offline space. So right now, if I want to make an appointment with a spa, I have to call them up, and then they will tell me, okay, these are the time slots which are available, and then I'll book an appointment, and then all that I'll show up and all that. Now a lot of those things can be done online, but they have not yet gotten online. So I'm trying to tap into that particular opportunity, and because most of the new businesses are opening up in India, I felt that India is the right market to enter, whereas US is a fairly mature market. Everyone has their own systems in place in order to run their business. So therefore, I didn't feel that the US market would be the right market to enter. So that's why I'm here in India. Uh, of course, I hired some of the software engineers and so on early on, like last year. So before I came here for about a year, I already had software engineers and so on working on building the product. So we went through multiple iterations and so on before I arrived in Bangalore, but now we have a stable product that is already out there on App Store. So yeah, so my development team is also in India, but it's distributed. And then my market is also like we are targeting Indian markets because I feel that this is a growing market, and hopefully people will be more open to using software for improving their workflow.
That's great. Yes. So that's great, Abhishek. So sounds like I think you have the market, which is India, and this is something that has started about a year back. So are there some logistics that you can explain? Like, I don't know, the ease of administrative process of opening or starting a company, like even like hiring the team, anything that you can share? I think that would be valuable in terms of the bureaucracy, right? I think that's another question that people have in mind. How
Right.
easy is it to do like business in India, and anything changed and so on?
Right, right. I think the way you should, so if anyone is trying to start a company in India, being in the US, I think it's a fairly uphill battle. Even though there's all this talk about the ease of doing business and so on, it's actually not that easy. If you are a foreign resident trying to start company in India, to be precise, as if even as a Indian citizen residing abroad, you become a non-resident Indian, because you are a non-resident for tax purposes, you really have to have an Indian co-founder, someone who's resident of India as a co-founder if you want to start an Indian company. Now, as soon as you start a company, you need to have an office location. So I'm assuming that people will be opening private limited, which is equivalent to C corporation in the US. So they need an Indian co-founder, an Indian resident co-founder, because that's how they will create a private limited company. And then they need to have an office address in India, and then they need to file for GST. Then they need to go to all the telecom department and whatnot and try to get registrations to get their OTP functional and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of requirements uh, in India that are hidden requirements, in the sense that you cannot find it written anywhere on the on a website. But as you start doing like step one, you realize that there is a step zero that you haven't completed. So you go back and start doing step zero, which will take you 1 month. Then you come to step one. Then you will realize that there is some step 1A that you had missed. And so now step 1A needs to be done, and so on and so forth. So that's the process in India. And therefore, I did not like, I've been trying to form my own company in India, but it has, as I've mentioned, it's a difficult challenge for me to start a company in India. So what I did was I already have a US company. In US, it's very easy. You start a company, and then after that, you can just get an EIN number from IRS fairly quickly. And then if you want to onboard merchants, you can apply to stripe.com, and you can get access to their payment gateway like within a day or two. So all in all, the entire process in US is like a 3-4 day long process. Whereas in India, you can continue to keep doing things for several months and still not make much progress. If you are a foreign resident trying to start company in India. On the other hand, if you're an Indian resident trying to start company in India, the thing is fairly straightforward, and there isn't much problem as such in order to do that. So nonetheless, if you want to get access to the payment gateways like Razorpay or Paytm and so on and so forth, it really takes a lot of effort for you to get through their customer success team or whatever that team is called. So anyways, that's been my experience so far. We still don't have access to a payment gateway, by the way, despite having all the paperwork done and everything. So, that's the state of affairs as far as the trying to start a company in India is concerned. But once you're able to get through the initial hurdle, I hope that the process after that is smooth. But I can come to that maybe like 6, 7 months later.
Okay, yeah.
That's it.
Again, thanks for sharing your experience thus far, and especially starting the company while living abroad and some of the challenges there, and also some of the things that you have experienced.
Right.
I'm also assuming that you have chosen Bangalore for a specific reason when you are trying to do, I mean, compared to maybe living close to the family, or maybe
Right.
anything that you can share some insights in terms of when you are selecting a particular city in India, how did you go about it, and
Right.
anything that you can share there?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So my parents live in Patna. Now, Patna doesn't really have a tech ecosystem as such. So, therefore, I didn't want to be in Patna. I wanted to be close to where a lot of the tech companies are located. So, that that brings me to Gurgaon, Mumbai, and Bangalore. Those are the three places, and Hyderabad. Four places with predominantly with a lot of tech companies. Chennai is sort of also upcoming tech hub in India. Now, if you look at all these five places, Bangalore happens to have the best air quality. Besides, also have a very thriving tech ecosystem and so on. So that's predominantly the reason the air quality was like the highest, the most important reason for choosing Bangalore as our base rather than any of the other cities. I was more inclined towards going to Mumbai, but my wife didn't want to be in Mumbai due to the high cost of living as well as low air quality. So that's how we ended up being in Bangalore. But I don't regret being in Bangalore at all. The real estate is comparatively cheaper in comparison to Mumbai. The tech ecosystem is very, very strong here, and people are extremely collaborative. Although I would say that for all the cities in the country, but certainly people in Bangalore are very collaborative. So that has also been a big boon. But we didn't go to Patna because Patna really doesn't have a tech ecosystem as such. So that's why we didn't want to be there.
Great. So maybe just switching the gears a little bit from a startup to the other one. So now that you have chosen the Bangalore, and so in terms of the logistics, even for the sabbatical move, anything
Right.
that you want to highlight, maybe because it's like a sabbatical, so maybe the logistics is a little bit different, and how did you go about it? Yeah.
So I wouldn't say the logistics are any different. We had to leave our home and rent it out for to someone else in the US. So for that, we had to empty our whole house, put most of our stuff in storage, and then we needed to come to India. As far as signing a lease is concerned, we signed the lease remotely, in the sense that when we were in the US, that's when we signed the lease. That happened to be a good experience. It turns out that, in the US, it's generally said that do not sign a remote lease. You have to go and physically inspect the property and this and that before you sign the lease. We didn't really follow that particular procedure for India because technically in India, not much cheating happens at the time of signing the lease. So you can watch the things remotely, and the real estate agent will take care of a lot of the signing part of it. So once we came here, there is a little bit of challenge in trying to use your US card on Amazon.in and some of the other websites. So we faced a few like fraud detection and all those things that gets raised if you're using your card in India. But after we informed all our credit card companies several times. So I'm talking about credit card companies in the US. When we informed them several times that we are in India and we did a lot of transactions, failed transactions several times, then eventually now none of my transaction gets cancelled because I'm using a US card. So now I'm able to use most of the my US card for most of the things, including for buying gasoline in my car or for buying things on Amazon. So I have not faced any issues with respect to using my US card for running transactions. So I think overall, I think the whole process was fairly smooth, and we didn't really have any negative adventure through the whole process. I don't know if you have any other specific questions related to our move, then I can maybe
Yeah,
expound on
I
other
think I
things.
was maybe more curious because in somebody who is already like made a decision moving permanently, it's a little bit of other logistics such as like
Right.
selling their items, permanently closing accounts or consolidating, and there are other aspects that come into
Right.
the
Right.
picture.
Right.
In the case
Yeah.
of a sabbatical, it's just going to be a long vacation, which is like
Oh,
you look in a different perspective. So
no, actually, no. Okay, so maybe I should add a little bit here. So last year we had come to India for a few months, a couple of months in 2022. And that's when we did a lot of the dirty things that needs to be done before you enter India. So for instance, we got a phone number on a postpaid account using my mother-in-law as a family owner, family account owner or something like that. So once I got the phone number, then I also opened a bank account in India, NRO, NRE account in
yeah,
India, and then on the NRO account, I could do UPI transaction. So I connected my Indian phone number to my NRO account, and then through that I was able to do UPI transaction. So overall, I did all of this stuff before I came to India this time. So I already had my UPI set up. I already had an Indian phone number set up. But if you are moving to India and you think that you will get a phone number in the first week itself, it's going to be a big uphill battle. And once you get your phone number, then getting a bank account and getting it linked to your phone number so that you can do UPI transaction, that's another hurdle that you need to pass through. So once all of this happens, which we did last year, so therefore we didn't have to do it this year. But I think that's a hurdle that you should probably pass before you plan on moving permanently to India, because I think those are sort of important fintech stuff one needs to do before they come to India. Otherwise,
yeah.
it'll become a challenge.
For sure. I mean, I think it's almost like you're starting your own journey, right? I mean, your own
Correct,
life, which has its different mechanisms such as
correct,
the
correct.
UPI, the payments, and all that stuff. So,
Right,
um,
right,
yeah. But maybe I was more talking about some of the things that you wind up in US or in foreign
right,
countries
right. We
before you
didn't have to wind up any
up
of the
anything because it's the situation is different.
right, right, right.
And maybe, yeah, I don't know if you mentioned about like, your kids, right? And how old
Yes,
they are. And then maybe, how did you go about finding a school and how are they adapting in India so far?
definitely. So I have two daughters, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. Um, so my 3-year-old daughter goes to nursery here at Oak Ridge International School, and my 5-year-old daughter is in the early years program one, EYP one, at again Oak Ridge International School. So they actually settled down in India fairly quickly, again because they remember their previous visit a year ago. So they knew what they were expecting. They came here, we got them admitted to the school. The school admission process was fairly straightforward. And yeah, and now they are going to school on a school bus. School bus is their best time of the day. They really look forward to going into the school bus in the morning and coming back from school bus in the afternoon. So that has certainly worked out for us very well. Um, yeah, and other than that, I think they have also had a lot of friends within the society. So in US, you want to find a person of your age, you have to walk half a mile to have the next door which has a kid of your age. But in India, you just have to go down the elevator and you have like 500 kids of your age. So they have really found a very vibrant friend circle here in Bangalore within our apartment complex, and we keep going to each other's place. The kids also were able to sign up for a lot of classes after coming to Bangalore. So we live in a society where we have a swimming pool, where we have a basketball court, we have a skating rink, and so on and so forth. So they got themselves into drawing class, dancing class, skating class, swimming class. So we got themselves admitted into all these different classes, some of which run once a week, some of which runs twice a week or thrice a week. So we know what the frequencies are, and so we take them to appropriate classes and so on. So they are really having a very very good time here in India in comparison to in the US. In US, it was so difficult to get them into classes. It used to be very expensive, but relatively speaking, like coming from the US to India, suddenly the classes become very cheap, and you would want to send them to as many classes and learn from the experts on how to do things. So my older daughter has learned a lot of the swimming aspects, and she's also able to skate now fairly easily. So we are very excited about some of these newer developments that we could not see in the US because it's so difficult, but here it's very easy to get them started on some of these things.
Looks like a lot of progress in like 3 to 4 months. So seems like they're
Yeah,
having plans with so
exactly.
many friends,
Right.
which is very close by, and with a lot of options to explore their
Yes,
interests. Yeah,
yes. Yeah, so we explored about 20 classes for each of the girls, and then finally we found like 3 4 classes that were very aligned with their interests and what they wanted to learn. So that's how. But the fact that you can actually try 20 classes and figure out like the 4 that works best for you within your budget, I think it's a big deal. Living in the US, I can tell you that it's really a big deal.
yeah,
So so we are very excited about that aspect of living in Bangalore.
that's great. And how has the social life been? Living in India for you, for your wife, and in general in Bangalore. Yeah,
Yeah, so one of the things one would expect being in the US, that India is somewhat different and that people are more outgoing and so on and so forth. We haven't found that to be very true. So there are some nuances to it. So for instance, within our society, we have a lot of festivals. Like the festival organization is at a really next level, where there is a dance and there is a stage and there are performers and there are like all the society people are also performing. So that aspect is that social aspect is very very strong and very very good, like much better than what we had expected. On the other hand, if you are expecting people to meet you on day to day basis, I think that's the part where it's a bit more challenging, primarily because people who are earning at a certain stage of their career, they are required to be on call for significant chunk of time, as a result of which you cannot really have an evening tea time, which our parent would have with their colleagues and so on. Here it seems less likely to be able to just call someone on a weekday evening and have a chat with them, primarily because some of them are working in US companies, so their work timings are actually in the evening, or some of them are working in Indian company, but those Indian companies are working with US companies. So by default, you report to work at 10 a.m., but you still have US client meetings in the evening. So during the weekday, it's been difficult. During the weekend, you can always find time to go out and socialize in a restaurant or some other place. And then we have had a few people with whom we have had like dinners together, or we have had chai time together on weekends. So those are also things that happens, but it's not as common as one would imagine sitting in the US.
yeah. And as you said, rightly said, I think it's just different stages of the life, and it
Yes,
also depends on the society, the community, the kind of
right.
the profile of the people, in a sense, like
Correct.
the business, like work culture and all that stuff. But
That's right. That's right. Yeah, exactly.
cool. Maybe is there anything from before, like taking the sabbatical leave to be in India? Like, is there some expectations that you have versus the reality, right? I mean, on any broad spectrum, like, uh, anything
Yeah.
that you can share, like, from your expectation to the reality, from this 3 to 4 months of living here.
Yeah, I think uh, I mean, the only major expectations we had was that when we come to India, people will have a lot of time to spend, and you can socialize a lot outside. Turns out that that particular is the only expectation that wasn't met. But other than that, I think all the other expectations are met. Some expectations are, of course, met beyond expectation. Like I said about the festival season, right? So, uh, yeah, I mean, my wife is extremely happy. She's going out for different kinds of dancing events within our society. Like there was a Durga Puja event, and there is a Diwali event, and so on and so forth. So we'll keep going out for some of these events. She goes out for a lot of those cultural events. My daughters have started participating in cultural events also. I didn't really expect them to start participating at such an early stage. But actually, within like 3 or 4 months, they are ready to participate on stages and so on. So I'm really like that. That's something we would not have expected in the US, but certainly it turns out to be the case in India. On the other hand, of course, we do miss some of the things about the US, such as being able to, like, at least in Columbus, everything is 20 minutes away. Like in 20 minutes, you can literally go to the outskirts of the city. So the fact that you can just pick up your car and be anywhere, anytime, because there isn't much traffic on the road, and the air quality is really very good. That's something we definitely miss in Bangalore. But certainly the fact that we can have help at home, and we can have drivers. If we don't want to drive our own car, we can just hire a driver to do it for us. And India is a very, very deep into the gig economy thing. So you can really hire drivers for 4 hours if you need them only for 4 hours and you don't want to do the driving. So all of those facilities are there in India now. A lot of it, by the way, is OTP driven. So you really need to have an Indian SIM card and an Indian working number on day one before you enter India. So I would suggest that people who are planning to come to India for long term, they should definitely at least get a bank account number, link it with their Indian phone number, and get their UPI thing sorted out. I think those three things, once you do it, then you can literally do anything in India, and you wouldn't have to have any problem. But anyways, yeah, what I was saying is that it's really very easy to get all kinds of help in India. So certainly that has been a very, very good thing for us, specifically now that we are starting our own company and we need to be on call 24/7 for various activities related to clients. So
Okay, yeah, great. Thanks for sharing your thoughts there. So, are there any topics that we haven't covered that you would like to, bring up or you know, or talk about?
uh, not really. I think as far as the travel within India is concerned, we haven't really done a lot of travel yet. So we don't know. Um, we don't have any recommendations as to what are good places to travel versus not so good places to travel. But once we settle down in India and we have like set up our business, I think we'll have more time to travel and we'll be able to give feedback on that as well. But other than that, I think uh, for other aspects of life, I think we have already covered everything that I wanted to discuss.
Okay, that's great. I know this might be an unusual question. Feel free to say like you don't want to answer, or we can punt it off. Just curious because you are in the academics
Right.
area, right? I think maybe is there anything that you can compare and contrast, especially maybe for the families who have kids growing up and they're thinking about living in US versus in India, maybe not in like a primary education, but maybe in the secondary or like when they get to bachelors and so on. So again, if you have information and if you would like to share your insights or your knowledge, I think it could be something that could be helpful. Just curious because you are in that domain. I thought I wanted to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think, so let me tell you, so I do have some thoughts on that, but certainly you are asking, so depending on at what stage of career people are moving from US to India, uh, they will have different requirements. So for instance, if they want to send their kids to undergraduate right away, so I can talk about undergraduate and above because at university, that's the
Yes.
part that I see.
And maybe
Uh,
just to maybe position that question also, like even though some people might be moving here while the kids are still in the early stage, right? I mean,
right,
when they're still in the third grade, fourth grade, or in the primary education, but
right,
just because they are going through this IB curriculum or the different curriculums, which is much more international, so they're designed more to like kind of doing the undergrad internationally than
right,
locally because they're not like
right,
so it could also
exactly,
apply for them. So it's just more
right,
of a train of a thought in terms of what curriculum they might want to put the kid in, right? I mean, CBSE versus
right,
IGSE versus IB. So
right.
again, just wondering again, maybe primarily from a university perspective. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Okay, understood. So I think the international curriculum certainly prepares you very well for building your resume to get into one of the one of the best universities internationally. So whether it's NUS in Singapore or whether it's universities in Europe or in the US, they actually structure their whole academic program in a way that you get a lot of brownie points that are needed so that when you apply, you have all those brownie points. Like, for instance, you have done some service, you have done some non-profit activities, you have raised some funding, this and that. Like, a lot of those things are needed. CBSE schools will not really get into all that nitty gritties. ICSE schools will also be just focusing more on academic side of things. But international curriculum will try to sort of give you a lot more exposure. I mean, not you, but the kids, a lot more exposure about some of these things, which will prepare them for university admissions in the US and internationally. Uh, but the question is whether doing uh, 15, 10, 15, 20 years later, would a US university education, would the Indian university education be as good as a US university education? I think the answer to that question is, as far as engineering is concerned, they are actually at par already. So there's no difference, not much difference between Indian education in engineering and US education in engineering, as far as the undergraduate is concerned. Even if you go for master's or PhD, I think IITs and IISCs also have very similar standards as the US universities have. The real problem comes when it comes to getting a job. So in US, there are a lot more high-tech jobs wherein your skill sets are actually needed to deliver on the job. Whereas in India, that's actually not the case. A lot of the times you have to learn things on the fly to carry out your jobs. And some of those high-tech jobs are missing at the moment. Now, what is true is a lot of US companies are setting up their R&D centers in India. um, so if that starts happening in greater proportion 5, 10, 15 years down the line, then I think even if you want to get your undergraduate and PhD from India and want to continue working in some of those companies, I think that would be an excellent opportunity. However, of course, US is known to be a world leader in the tech space. So if you are doing your undergraduate from a US university and a master's or PhD from US university, then the rest of the world opens up for you. But I will tell you that not many jobs are there in the high tech space. So I come from the AI and data science area. That's my core research area, and there is a huge glut of very highly talented data science students in the US right now, and it's very difficult for them to find a job in the US. So a lot of people who went from India to the US thinking that they'll do a master's in data science and then they'll get a job in the US, they're not able to do that right now because there is just too many data science people in the US and not much demand from the industry. So those kind of market realities can hit at some point of time, but uh, that's why I'm not able to make a projection over the next 15, 20 years. But as far as the schooling is concerned, I think international curriculum prepares you to apply for some of these universities in the US and Europe. So
Great.
hopefully that will be helpful
I
in
think you
making.
answered that question. It's more on this school curriculum and how well the student is prepared to take on that, right? I mean, whether the opportunities are going to be there or not, it just hard to
Correct.
predict when it's like
Very
40
helpful.
years,
Yeah.
15 years, depending
Correct.
on the new technologies, because it's just growing at such a rapid pace
That's
and
right.
things are evolving. So
That's right. And a lot of things are getting commoditized. I think that's the other problem. 10 years ago, if you wanted to train a model, you really needed a data scientist to come and, set up the whole experiment. Now, it's a matter of a few seconds. You download TensorFlow and you can start doing all kinds of data science stuff like within a few seconds. So it's just, things have been commoditized to an extent that you don't really need a lot of specialized skill set. And that's going to continue happening. And that's going to continue to change the job market quite significantly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So thanks a lot, Abhishek, on that. So, is there anything that you want to advise or suggest people who are thinking about relocating, either for doing the startup or even trying to test the waters or anything, right? I mean, anything from your perspective that you want to share with the audience here?
Yeah, I think the startup ecosystem. So let me divide my answers into two parts. So one is set of people who want to come to India and work in India. I think in those situations, most of the people that I have found who have moved to India from US or from other countries, including European countries, they tend to stick to their original employers and they just move their office. From US office, they've moved to Indian office, or from European office, they've moved to Indian office. So that seems to be the easiest way for people to move. And that is tried and tested, in the sense that a lot of people are doing that. Like, our society is full of people who are doing that kind of stuff. The second type of people who might be coming for startups, then of course you're not uh, looking at the work culture in India. You literally are setting up the work culture for your own company. So you can set up howsoever way you want to set up. And I think there is ample amount of talent to hire for your own startup. How you get funding to run that startup is certainly something you need to think about. And how would you reach out to your customers is something that you would have to think about very carefully if you're coming to the Indian market. Uh, the the only problem comes if you're coming from US to India, but you need to take up a position in an Indian company. Then you really have to be very careful about who your managers are, what kind of work culture does that company has, and things like that. Like, you have to do your due diligence before you take up a position in India. Because without doing due diligence, I think a lot of people who are coming from the US, who have been in the US work culture, which is very 9 to 5 oriented, or 8 to 5 oriented, they find it very difficult to get accustomed to the Indian work culture, which flows all the way into the evening and night, and sometimes even on evenings and weekends. So, anyways, that's something I think people will have to think about. But I believe, yeah, most of the people would be just transferring their own position from a US company to an Indian company, to their Indian subsidiary, and that's not that difficult. Then life is fairly straightforward and easy.
Okay, great. So I think that's all I have from my side. So thank you very much, Abhishek, for taking the time and sharing your thoughts, especially the points on the startup and how the kids are getting settled, and your insights in terms of the education system, the schooling at both here in India as well as in US. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your insights, and good luck with everything with your company and with whatever the decision you make. So really appreciate you taking the time and talking to us.
Thank you, Avinash. Thank you very much for your time.
That's great.
Sure.
Thank you all for joining us on this insightful journey of Desi Return. If you enjoyed this episode and want to explore more stories and expert advice, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts and experiences. By the way, check out the links in the description below for our Facebook group and social media for updates and engaging discussions, as well as connecting with fellow Desi Returners. Thank you once again, and until next time, may your Desi Return journey be filled with joy, growth, and endless possibilities.